Thank you for joining us. This is the Inside Outreach Podcast. My name is Taron Epps, and I'm joined here by Mayor Stan Booker. He is the mayor of Lawton, and I really appreciate you being here. You're the first elected official to come on the podcast, so it's a big deal for me, and I really appreciate your time. I know it's limited.
Well, it's a big deal for me, too. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem. I want to start by asking, so you were born in Lawton. You've been here for a while. I don't mean to date you, but you've been here for a couple of decades. What are some of the things that are different now than what Lawton was like when you were growing up?
So I wasn't born here.
Okay.
I moved here in second grade. But, Lawton, we're a community where people move here. I'm not saying we don't have people that were born and raised here. Certainly we do. Mm-hmm. But because of our attachment to Fort Sill, we have an attachment to the world.
Right.
And that is just awesome. It really makes us a diverse community, culturally diverse from different places around the world. We have, I'm kind of getting off, but you're asking me some things about Lawton, and I'm here to promote Lawton.
Right.
We have a German community here. We have an Asian community here. We have a community of American Samoans here. And so we're very diverse, internationally diverse. And that makes us very unique, especially in our state of Oklahoma. So I'm very proud of that, and it gives us an edge over everybody else to live in an area that's so diverse. Now, I did move here in second grade, and then I moved away as a young man and lived in Marlow, just 30 miles east of here, for 25 years. I moved back in 2007. I actually did not live in town at the time. I moved in town in 2014. So, so I've been back about a decade, I guess, a decade and a half.
Okay. Yeah, I think that when you have a military town, you have a different dynamic than almost any other city. Lawton's unique in a lot of ways. I want to get your insight on how Fort Sill affects Lawton. Other than diversity, what are some of the real effects that it has on Lawton? What are some of the real effects that it has on the community?
Well, obviously, the biggest impact to Southwest Oklahoma is military.
Right.
With Fort Sill and Altus, with Fort Sill being the biggest.
Right.
And people from several counties work at Fort Sill.
Right.
That doesn't even include all of the people that have retired here because of Fort Sill.
Okay.
So Fort Sill is a huge impact on the community, but what it does is it brings a brain pool. Have you heard of brain drain?
Right.
A community can have brain drain.
Right.
And certainly we have had that in our young people. We can talk about that in a minute.
Right.
But what Fort Sill does is reverse that brain drain for us by bringing a pool of people here where half of the people retire here. Half the people retiring from Fort Sill stay in the area as long as we provide them jobs. So are we generating the jobs that help people succeed in their second career? Because military retires very young in their 40s.
Right.
And so you get somebody that's 40, 42, 44 years old, and they're retiring, even 50, and they want to go on and earn another income and to set up their future. We need to be the place that we bring that. And we do that in so many ways, and we can talk about that later. Now, the other thing that we do locally is we create those jobs so that we don't get brain drain, right, which is typically associated with our kids getting educated, and then they leave because there are no jobs available. So we're working on reversing that in a big way as well.
Yeah, I think that's a real thing when a lot of communities outside of military installations, right? If you're talking about Raleigh, North Carolina, or Radcliffe, Kentucky, right? They have they're so supported by the installation that they don't always have their own economy, and I feel like Lawton has faced that in some ways. But when you look at how Lawton is, like, let's say we have a time machine, we can jump into 10 years. What are some of the things that we really want to see improve? Is that just economics, or is that some some social aspects.
Well, all of that revolves around economics.
Okay.
So let's talk about economics, because that is the foundation of everything.
Right.
And if you think otherwise, that's feel good politics, I guess, because you have to build that economic base, and at the foundation of that economic base is quality jobs. So we have a kind of a two-pronged approach at that, and one of it is what we call traditional industrial development. Okay. And we've gotten away from the word economic development. You may hear me say it a little bit, but what I really mean is industrial development, because I want to focus on job. Everything is economic development.
Right.
So let's focus on job creation, and let's call it industrial development. And we do traditional industrial development, which is manufacturing and assembly type jobs.
Right. Jobs
where somebody comes here and builds a plant and makes something that's exported outside the community. Okay? But high-tech jobs is something that we've been missing. Okay. And so we're working to bring those high-tech jobs in, and that's where the FISTA came in, because the market is the Futures Command,
right,
part of which is located at Fort Sill. And their job is taking the Army to the future faster,
right,
to shorten the time that new weaponry comes to the field for the soldier, okay? So the FISTA, the Fires Innovation Science and Technology Accelerator, right, is designed to promote the development of those high-tech jobs. They're going to form somewhere around the Futures Command.
Right.
So our job is facilitating that happening here. And as a matter of fact, here we are. What is today, like the 10th? Is it the 10th of July?
The 11th.
11th? Okay. Right. So I really feel like sometime this month the government will be making an award contract that will be very excited in that arena.
So Lawton's leveraging some of the changes that's going on in the military as a way to get jobs here. That's interesting. How so when we're talking about jobs, everybody wants engineers and software engineers, right, working on the next software, and people building, the new military equipment and all of that. But there's still people who have these, regular manual jobs, right? And when you're looking at kind of the future of work, you're going to see some of these jobs get, offshored, and automation takes over some of these jobs. So there's going to be, less of these kind of jobs, these manual labor, repetitive jobs. How do we focus on working on that? How do we focus on, fixing that for people that way? Because everybody's not going to be a software engineer.
So there's only so much we can do if people aren't willing to be a part of their own solution.
Okay.
And that has been a challenge where people want something handed for them. But the truth is, and you know this, you're graduating from college next May, right?
Right.
You have to invest in yourself, don't you?
Right.
And at the minimum, you have to invest time. Now, there are all kinds of job training programs, and I sit on the Governor's Council for Workforce Development for Economic Development, okay? And there are all kinds of programs that will help you study and learn to take yourself to a high level with very little commitment from you except time. Will you take the time to invest in yourself? Okay. And so that's what that's about. And we work constantly to try to get people to do that. Cameron University has the Cameron Foundation that will help people go through college that really need it. But here's the key. You've got to be willing to invest in yourself. Yeah. Then Great Plains Foundation has the same thing that will help people get an education at Great Plains Tech Center. But guess what? They have to be willing to invest in themselves. So you can't do it for people.
Right.
All you can do is provide the opportunity.
But there are resources going towards helping people transition job fields or helping people get into new jobs and gain new skills. I think that's really the goal. Of course, I can't make somebody, transition their job field or make somebody get a new skill and make it more marketable, but I can give them those resources. So what do you think about Lawton as what do you think about Lawton's crime situation? We've had crime. I think the perception of Lawton is a dangerous area. You get here, you spend some time here, that perception dissipates. But what is your feelings about crime in Lawton?
Well, I've never felt unsafe in Lawton,
right.
But certainly there are places that you would feel unsafe if you were in them. And some of those places you might go to during the day and you don't go at night. Do you know what? Every city has those.
Right.
Now let's talk about. So we'll just admit we've got those places, all right?
Right.
Because I don't like running from things.
Okay.
And when I was running for office, I used to say we need to quit leaning on the prison as part of our problem. But the truth is, crime at the prison is part of our city statistics.
Okay.
So when there's murders at the prison or other assaults at the prison, those go against us in that. But you know what? They're also providing jobs, aren't they?
Okay.
And it's there, so let's deal with it. Let's deal with what's in our face. Now, here's what I've said from the very beginning. You could call out the National Guard and put a National Guardsman on every corner. This is not possible.
Right.
You would not impact the crime. You can't do that. What you've got to do, crime is a function of the culture, and you've got to change the culture. Now, the only way that I know to change the culture is to invest in our children. And the theory behind it is most crime is committed by the time you're 27 years old.
Okay.
So after 27 years old, the crime starts to drop dramatically in a person's life.
Right.
So if we can keep our kids busy till they get to 18 or 21 years old and keep them focused on the right kinds of things, we will eventually flatten that crime curve out of the young people in crime. Here's what we have to do. Here's how you change the crime culture. You invest in kids. Okay. That's it. You invest in kids. And a community can't go wrong that's investing in kids. Now, our community has said, let's start the Youth and Family Affairs Committee. And they funded this with $6 million over a 15-year period. And so right now we're developing, this is the first year it's actually been funded. It's actually, I said 15 years, should have said 13 years because the first 2 years we were dealing with COVID and didn't get going. Right. So $6 million over 13 years. And that money's being spent on programs that will help kids. Like, for instance, one of my favorite is the STEM partnership we did with Lawton Public Schools. And Lawton Public Schools did a STEM camp this summer for high-risk kids. And so that's one thing that we're doing. Now, another thing that we're doing is we want to be the #1 youth sports program in the state of Oklahoma. Okay. And so we've started the Sports Authority, the Lawton Youth Sports Authority. Right. And their job, and it's not going to happen overnight. A lot of people say, well, you start it, they're not doing anything. Right, it takes a while just to get organized and get your plan together. And by the way, they have been taking requests for proposals for a director, and I think they've done interviews. Okay. So that youth sports program, because parents want sports programs for their children. And remember, our overarching theme, Taron, is become a community of choice for young families. So everything we do is about becoming a community of choice for young families. And when we test everything against that goal and we move towards it, we'll change over time that crime culture.
So invest in the people who are most likely to commit these crimes at a young age, right? And keep them out of the streets, keep them out of the situations where they can do that. That makes sense. I've always looked at crime as or not even just crime, but all societal problems as kind of a cycle. If you don't have adequate education, you might have higher levels of crime. You might have. So when you look at some of the big things, right? Education, healthcare, what are other big things? Jobs. What do you think is the biggest thing, right, out of all these different, if you want to say departments, that is that one thing that if we can improve, we make the cycle better?
So I got off my talking points because that's part of the Youth and Family Affairs Committee. Now, first of all, the most important thing is education.
Right.
And see, here's another little factoid that hangs over that we need to realize is so important because it's a measure we have to improve. 80% of everybody in jail does not have a high school diploma.
Okay.
I'm going to repeat that. 80% of everybody in jail does not have a high school diploma. So what do we have to do? We have to keep kids in school till they get that high school diploma. Now, I do need to say here that education is not a municipal function in Oklahoma.
Okay.
That's a function of the school system and the state.
Okay.
Healthcare is not a municipal function other than general healthcare like the sewer and water system are part of healthcare, right?
Right.
Health and safety. So, but our Youth and Family Affairs Committee uses as a measure some of the things associated that we know improve high school graduation rates. Let me give you an example. Youth and Family Affairs Committee might be sponsoring some arts, whether visual arts, vocal arts, performing arts. They might be sponsoring something in that arena. Why? We know statistically that children that are involved in the arts have a 34% higher graduation rate than kids that are not.
Okay.
So there are things we can do as a municipality, even though education is not our function.
Right.
There are things we can do in the recreation and community building arena that help grow that graduation rate. When we grow that graduation rate, we've helped kids succeed.
Okay. No, that makes sense. I didn't know that that the education system wasn't a municipal function, but I mean that definitely highlights some
It
points.
may be in other states,
Right,
but
right.
we have 5 different school systems represented inside the city limits of Lawton.
Okay. Yeah. Because I'm from. I was born in Killeen. Killeen, Texas. Killeen has its own independent school district, KISD. So it's different for every state. And so I guess if you go to somewhere like that, that's more relevant. When you look at Lawton as a whole, when you look at the people who are running Lawton, city council, the city attorney, city manager. I've been to the city council meetings. That's what you call it. What do you think about that team? Because that team it's a solid team when I look at it. What do you think about it? What's your thoughts on the guys that are running the city?
So, well, first of all, let me talk about the city council. I've been very fortunate to work with a city council that's focused on the future.
Okay.
And, we look to the future for everything. When we solve a problem for today, we're looking to the future. How do we solve this problem to get us to the future?
Right.
So I think we have a city council that's very future focused. And that's what it takes. And our city council, each different member has a different set of skills that they bring to the council, and the council looks to them for that area of expertise. I think the city manager's done a great job since he's been here. He's been here for 3 years. We've improved a lot of things, but it takes time to improve. So we haven't got everything done.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, you get the people that complain about everything, but they don't notice all the things we have made improvements on. But I believe we're on a trajectory of improvement in our city.
Yeah, it's definitely tangible. I mean, you can see it. Everything that Krista Ratliff is doing at the Chamber of Commerce and how it's affecting the community in a positive way. Everything that you guys are doing. But there's kind of an elephant in the room when it comes to economic development and jobs. Is we're at the back end, but COVID affected us. I've seen stores close. I've seen people go out of business. I've seen the ramifications of some of these ramifications of some of the economic policies, and I know that's not all Lawton. I know it's not all Oklahoma. But what did you think about how we, as a city, state, country, handled COVID?
So I thought we handled it the best that we could with the information and understanding that we had. It was a new area for everybody, and the council did what they felt like they had to do to protect the public.
Right.
Now, let's talk about some of the things you said, because it did impact some businesses, but before long we found out that the government was sending money out to everybody, right? Yeah. And the government, in my opinion, overreacted and has caused some of the problems in the economy that we find today. Okay. I'm not pointing a finger at any party in that, because both parties were really involved in that.
Right.
So, and I'll also tell you that that caused an economic rebound, that we have more active businesses in our city today than we had before COVID started. Okay. And it's 2 years and 4 months, maybe 3-4 months. And that's something that's kind of interesting. It seems like a long time ago, and it wasn't that long ago. Just in January, we were worried our hospitals were going to get overflowed, right? It hadn't been that long ago. Yeah. Long story short, I think we came through it better for what we've done. Now I want to jump on something you said, and you talked about economic development and job creation. We're working hard to do that.
Right.
Economic development or industrial development, job creation, is the hardest thing a community does. The hardest. For years, decades, Lawton has not properly invested in the machine that would create those jobs. The 2020 Propel CIP gave us the funds to help propel us forward. And the CIP, if you remember, was called Propel.
Right.
That has generated so many leads in our industrial development, and we've got so many things so close to announcing, but we know in industrial development things get to the end and fall through. Right. And that's unfortunate, but we have to work them to the end. We've got several things that are close. I believe we're going to be making announcements.
Yeah. I mean, Brad Cooksey, I guess his name, over there at Lawton Economic Development Corporation. He's doing good work, trying to bring jobs here. It's not a overnight thing, and I think that's one of the things that I've seen, especially with the COVID thing, because look, regardless of how we handled it, it is what it is. We're past that bridge. So how do we as a community come back from something like that and say, how actually, better question, how do we get people, and I see you at all these events, right? You're damn near everything, right? You go to almost all these events. How do we as a community pull people out of their house and feel a sense of community, right? Because when you start volunteering and start helping out in the community, you feel a sense of community. How do we get more people to volunteer or just be in the community and have more a wider community connection?
That is a great question. And we do things like Leadership Lawton that tries to engage people. It only engages about a dozen people a year. So, we can only make so much dent with that. But some great leaders have come out of Leadership Lawton. Now, one of the things that's happened over the past, especially over the last decade, is the rise of Facebook. And that's been counterproductive to us. And I don't know if you notice, I don't even know if you're on Facebook. Sometimes young people aren't. You're not? No, you're a smart man. So what I've gone to is just making positive posts. And I make a positive post like being at the farmer's market or being at the Council of the Blind or whatever I'm at. And I just make a post. And I know that people are going to go in there and make negative comments. Right. And I just don't go back and answer it. Yeah. You're going to love this, somebody sent me an article that Lawton was number 19, I think it was, in the top 25 cities that's gaining in millennials. Mm. We were up against some big cities. Houston was one above us. How about that? Oh. We gained almost as many millennials as Houston. And Houston's Huge. Several million people. Now, you can go to my Facebook page and see that. And so I had a guy in Huntsville, Alabama go on, and he made a positive comment about Lawton. Mm-hmm. And then people in Lawton started trashing Lawton. So I don't know how you overcome that negative stuff that's so vocal. And there are people that they didn't have a platform before, and for whatever reason that makes them feel good to trash any good news that come out. And that's probably our biggest challenge as we go forward. Now, what you've identified, getting people more involved, it's huge. And I'd love to hear ideas about how people get more involved. There's so many ways to get involved. You can get involved with a civic club. You can get involved in your church. Right. You can do so many things. And there are so many 501c3s that need good help. Yeah. And all of those things are what really fulfills you in life.
Yeah, yeah. No, once you start volunteering and you start feeling a part of your community, it's over with. Now you're stuck with it. You feel that connection. Yeah, I
it's called being a part of the solution instead of just complaining about the problems.
Yeah, yeah. I did a podcast with my friend Chance Rogers, who's a 911 operator for Comanche County, and he talked about that a little bit too. He said that that online community, that Facebook community, it really challenges the perception of Lawton and how people are viewed and how crime is viewed and how the situation in Lawton is viewed. So, yeah, it's very tangible. I want to transition to something that's very unique to Lawton, being in the Midwest, and that is that we have medical marijuana here. It's medically legal, and that presents challenges in its own ways. How do you feel like that industry, and let's be frank, there's a weed dispensary on every corner, right? How do you feel like that industry has impacted Lawton? Do you think that it's impacted it positively, or how do you feel the impact has been?
I personally don't think there's anything positive about legalized marijuana. Now, that's my personal opinion. It is the law of the land.
Right.
And because of the constitutional change that was passed by the people, we have to allow those to practice here.
Right.
The council has decided to be less controlling to avoid lawsuits.
Okay.
Now, I do believe that the council just passed a fee increase that includes a $2,500 a year license for those dispensaries.
Okay.
And the reason is the city council made it clear that industry focuses or licenses needed to pay for the service provided. And we're told that sector of the economy requires a lot of attention from the city.
Right.
So that was why the fees were increased to help pay for all the services that industry requires.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I read an article that was talking about a state senator that was really worried about the industry and how it was progressing and still dealing with crime in that world. But it's the law, so you can't dismiss it and treat it like it's not real. But at the same time, you have to be real about the challenges it presents. I want to ask you I want you to scratch my personal curiosity question. What is it like just day to day being a mayor? What is some of the day to day? What do you do on random Tuesday? Nothing's big going on. What's going on in the mayor's world?
Yeah, there are no random Tuesdays. There's always something going on. We're always working on the next thing. We have a council meeting tomorrow. So right now I may be working on the challenges that there may be associated. I may be calling some council members discussing an item they may be interested in, or them calling me. Okay. Now, we do have the Open Meetings Act, which means we can only talk to 3 people. Okay. We can't. There are 9 people on the council. I'm the tiebreaker.
Right.
I haven't voted maybe 5 times, and 4 years. Okay. So, but I still follow under the same rules. And so once I talk to 3, if somebody else calls me, I say, well, I can't talk to you about that.
Right.
We have to wait till it's on the council. So we're always working towards, do we have all the information we need towards that? Where's everybody at on this and that kind of thing? And all that's good. So there are no real random. The closest we get to random is those weeks that have 5 Tuesdays in them, those months that have 5 Tuesdays, and we kind of get a week off there.
Yeah. Okay.
Other than that, you're constantly doing something. Mm-hmm. The city, in its well over $100 million budget, is constantly something going on. Plus, I go to every event that I can possibly make. There's some that I can't. And so, that keeps me busy.
Yeah, we always see you out. We're always wondering how you do it because you're always at these events. Yeah. Is it on a scale of 1 to 10, would you describe it as a fun job, or would you describe it as a job that's necessary but isn't super fun?
Well, I'm going to put it to you this way. There are fun times and there are not fun times, just like any job. Right. But I'm going to tell you this. This is the most fulfilling thing I've ever done in my life besides my personal life, being a Christian, a husband, a father, and a grandfather. Now, it doesn't beat that.
Right.
But it beats all the work I've ever done. Now, it doesn't pay enough to be a job.
Right.
Okay? I do make $15,000 a year, and that comes to you in a paycheck, but it's really to pay your expenses. So that, and they give it to you as a paycheck, because if it was an expense account, everybody gripe about whatever you spent your money on.
Yeah.
So that's why it's that way. But so the pay's not very good, but the pay is real good because it is so fulfilling to know that you're having a positive impact for the future of your community.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I want to close out on a real question and something that's been on my mind. The last couple of years, we've had a lot of tension with our police departments across the country. I've always felt that LPD has been exceptionally professional in every interaction I've had with them. I want your thoughts on LPD. What do you think about what's going on there? I heard I've never met the chief, but I've heard he's a straight shooter, pretty good guy. What's your thoughts on the police department and how we're doing as a police department here in Lawton?
So I think the police department has a very tough job.
Yes.
And there's going to be times when fighting crime and corruption is not pretty.
Right.
But here's what I heard the chief say one time. And he said, every day we go out and we fight crime. And sometimes it's not pretty. And we don't always get it right.
Right.
But when we don't get it right, we're going to make it right. And what he means by that is we have internal policies, and when they're not followed, there are consequences to officers that don't follow that.
Right.
And I'm gonna tell you that too many times in our society today, an officer does something wrong, and sometimes it's just a bad mistake.
Right.
And that officer casts a negative shadow on everybody else. And it shouldn't be that way, should it? Because I believe that our police department does a great job. Yeah. And I think it's important for us to find ways to make sure they have everything they need technology-wise. And let me throw this in while we're at it. We can't hire enough police to keep our police department full of the authorized positions. And that's because there's a mood in the country that makes people not want to be police. Now, I personally think that is people are scared if they make a mistake, they'll be in prison for the rest of their life.
Right.
And I understand that. So what does that mean? We have to find ways to equip, and I speak of technology, equip our police officers with the best technology so they can get more done. Some of the things that I've had informal discussion about is cameras at all of our parks and on all of our main roads, so that some of that can be monitored by a non-uniform person, maybe at dispatch. Or maybe it's just there so it's recording activity so you can go back to it. The exact application is going to be figured out. There's what they call shot detection software. And I don't know a lot about that, but I think it triangulates to locate where a gun has gone off, and it tells you in seconds where it happened.
Right.
And so you know within seconds instead of within minutes, and the police can respond. There are license plate readers that can fit on cars, and it's reading every license plate that goes by and checks, and that helps get criminals, stolen cars, wanted people off of the street faster.
Right.
There is technology that we can still put in place. We just have to figure out what it is and how in the world are we going to fund it.
That's
Funding's always the big question in municipal government.
Of course. Yeah, that's all insightful. This has been very insightful. I've learned a lot. Learned a lot about you and your perspective on things. Anything you want to say to the people of Lawton? Anything? Any messages you want to give to anybody that's listening that just wants to know more about Lawton or wants to know how Lawton's doing?
Well, I think you had the best message, and that is get involved in your city. It makes a difference in the way you see things. And I'm reminded of a story of somebody I go to church with who was constantly complaining about what's going on in the city. And I was eating lunch with this individual one day, and I said, why don't you get involved? Why don't you volunteer? If you're not happy with what's going on, this happened to be about the animal shelter.
Right.
If you're not happy with what's going on at the animal shelter, go down there and volunteer your time. And do you know she did? And now she is investing in her community. She serves on a few committees in the city, and I don't see her complaining about the city anymore. So it's changed her whole perspective about how things work to increase her understanding. So I encourage everybody to get involved in that way. That was the best message. We have a lot of great things going on in Lawton Fort Sill. Lawton Fort Sill has a great story to tell. You've heard some of it today about what's going on, but you haven't even heard a thimbleful of all the great things going on in our community.
That's good. Mayor Stan Booker, I really appreciate you coming by, and I really appreciate you
thank you for having
being
me.
a part of my so thank you. This has been the Inside Outreach podcast. My name is Taron Epps. I was here with Mayor Stan Booker, and we are good.